Well, good evening. Welcome. This is GBNews Co. with me, Nana Akua. I'm sitting in for Michelle and keeping me company until 7, Gawain Towler and also Stuart Fawcett. Now, we've been talking a lot about the situation with the Jewish community and the fact that these two awful men were sent to prison for life, but it is sort of life. I hope it actually means proper life, because sometimes it doesn't. Trevor says that when are we going to end this con of sentencing to life imprisonment when 99% of the time it means nothing of the sort? Life with a minimum term of 7 years and 162 days in prison is ridiculous. And Brady says don't bother jailing them, just deport them and their families. This is referring to the two men that were sentenced today for plotting to murder as many Jews as they could, which is absolutely horrendous, really, frankly. I don't know what is wrong with people. But as we move on to this story, the High Court has ruled that a decision to ban Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation was unlawful. Now, the legal challenge was brought by the group's co-founder after former Home Secretary Yvette Cooper moved to proscribe the organisation following a series of incidents, which one of them was actually activists breaking into RAF Bryce Norton and spray painting two aircraft, which they actually destroyed, which would have been dangerous for someone to fly. Now, the current Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, says that she is disappointed by the ruling, has confirmed the government will appeal the decision. The Metropolitan Police, meanwhile, said it would focus on gathering evidence of potential offences where support for Palestine Action is expressed, rather than making arrests at the time in its response to the ruling. Panel, your thoughts. Gawain Towler, do you think that this sort of emboldens people? Of
course it does.
To carry on with this?
Of course it does. I mean, and I would have thought if the government is appealing, it's interesting, the police are now rolling back what they do, but until the appeal is... The legislation is there.
Yeah. And
so, therefore, Palestine Action is still regarded as a terrorist group, despite this court judgment, until such time as the Court of Appeal has judged.
I think it's the 20th of February.
But the point is that they still are. So the police to say, right, we're giving in already. But I mean, look, this is an organisation... no, actually, that's not the important thing. The important thing is this was voted through the House by people elected by this country, by the people of this country. It was a democratic decision by the sovereign parliament of this country. So how on earth can we have the courts overturn that? And it was it was a massive majority. It's a massive majority. So what is going on? Who governs the country?
Why is that the courts can just overrule the government? It seems absolutely absurd. I guess, isn't it for the courts to enforce the law, but not to create the law?
So the courts can't overrule legislation that has been given assent through Parliament. That is sovereign. The courts can determine interpretation of law, because that's how our legal system works, as you've seen in cases Supreme Court with the identification of women, etc., and the interpretation of certain laws. But in this particular case, the law is still the law. Palestine Action is a proscribed organisation, and I wholly support that. I think it was the right move, perhaps even a little bit later than it should have been. But nonetheless, they are a proscribed organisation. And why? Because the kind of people that get involved in that to a greater or lesser extent are condoning attacks upon our country's own security apparatus. These people went into RAF Bryce Norton and decided that their cause, which, quite frankly, they know very little about in our full context of history, their cause was so important that they had the right to put our security of our nation at risk.
This is your opportunity to take advantage of ExpressVPN and their best deal ever. Get a premium VPN with enhanced privacy, security, and identity protection. By supporting ExpressVPN, you're supporting us here at GBNews. And on premium and advanced plans, you get a dedicated zero-knowledge password manager app, and coming soon, the world's first consumer AI platform built on confidential computing. This video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, couldn't be easier to use. Just click the link, download the app, connect, and you're protected. Click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code to save up to 82% off ExpressVPN, plus 4 extra months free.
And for that reason, I believe it certainly warrants the fact that the organisation should be deemed a terror organisation. And not only that, because of that case, there's also other cases where they've used acts of economic terror, trying to destroy economic apparatuses that they feel morally objected to. Now, in terms of the Metropolitan Police's statement today, I don't think it's right. The police do not get to choose how they interpret the law, whether determined by whether the fact they think they can get prosecutions. It will be too late when more Jews get harmed in this country, and all the Metropolitan Police has to show is to say, well, we were watching them and we knew they were up to something. That will not be good enough. The law is the law. They should continue to be arrested because often these people will have links to nefarious activities that could be putting people's safety at risk. I think we need to follow the example that's being set in Greater Manchester, where the policing mandate is much different. The mandate is to protect people first and look at the integrity of being able to prosecute afterwards. It is no good when the horse is bolted and you're trying to shut the gate, because we will have more Jews harmed in this country, and it has to stop.
It won't just be Jews.
Well, I think the judge's point was that it was disproportionate, wasn't it? So if you try to parallel Palestine Action with ISIS, it doesn't kind of wash, does it? So that's what the judge's point was. But I don't think you need to wait for someone to get to that point. And those things, something like ISIS is rooted in sort of a rotten ideology, and that people become involved in it, and then it becomes more.
The suicidal empathy is the rotten ideology of these people. It's suicidal empathy. They wish to destroy our country in order to promote a cause that actually is murderous. That is absolutely abhorrent. And yes, and that's how the court did judge, you're right. However, Parliament, which is sovereign, voted to do something. Parliament makes those decisions on behalf of the people of this country who have voted for its members. They give instruction to the courts, and the courts interpret those instructions. But the instruction was pretty clear. This organisation was prescribed as a terrorist organisation with the support of a vast majority of the members of the House of Commons. Therefore, the court does not really have the rights to overturn that. It just doesn't. And they're saying that only 6 or 7 people comes under the bracket as what the court defines as a terrorist. So they're acting as a terrorist, but the organisation isn't. But they're the representatives of the organisation, and, as I say, Parliament, elected members of the House of Commons, voted in vast majority to prescribe this organisation. Done.
Well, Peter says, I'm not surprised by the court's judgment on Palestine Action. All our judges are left-wing.
Well, they're not, and I don't think that's fair. But the fact is that, in the end, it is up to Parliament, which is our sovereign body, to make these decisions. And this is a clear case of judicial overreach. I understand there's an ECHR aspect to this, but this is just clearly judicial overreach. And it's not just this case. This has been happening. There was a green organisation that was breaking jets as well a couple of years ago, and they got let off, having broken the noses of these jets, and they were found not guilty. Clear guilty. They filmed themselves doing it. When you had the Just Stop Oil people cutting up paintings, filming themselves, no case to answer. This is not just this case. This is a constant.
But they, I mean, like, look, they would argue that this is more direct action, not really terrorist action. So
smashing our security infrastructure is terrorism.
Compare it to Just Stop Oil pouring yellow paint on things, you know. What is that?
My point is, we have this judicial overreach. There is a clear breach of the law, and in many cases, there's no case to answer. Cutting up a painting, being filmed to do so, that is a clear breach of the law.
But I think we need to look at the...
But because it's political, oh no, we don't touch it.
And also possibly because it's a lot of white middle-class people who look very, very sensible, who you wouldn't...
Well, they don't look sensible.
Well, but you know what I mean? As in, a lot of them were very, very old, weren't they? Had nothing else to do, didn't they?
No, you're right. You were absolutely right.
Rupert Fortescue-Smythe.
Because this is the reach of this particular movement at the moment. At the one end, it's carrying out these acts of vandalism and terror, but that is permeating through lots of different demographics. And this is bringing extremism to parts of society that you would never expect it to come to. Earlier this week in Brighton, Sky News followed a middle-class, I would say, white man, essentially trying to say to people on the doors of Brighton, please don't buy goods by Israeli or Jewish organisations because we want to boycott them because of my particular political cause. I've actually wrote a piece on this for GBNews, which is coming out shortly, outlining it and the parallels that it is. And this is now being mainstreamed. Green MP Carla Denyer, I believe, is trying to replicate this in her seat in Bristol. And I can't emphasise enough, the last time this sort of thing happened was in Nazi Germany on Kristallnacht, boycotting Jewish businesses. And it is coming from this particular movement that Palestine Action tries to create these spectrums of extremism and extremist thought.
It's this green left, hard left organisation. But what's amazing about this, of course, is they look at reform and say, oh, we see reform and we feel still parallels from 1930. Rubbish. They're the ones. They're the brown shirts.
Well, it's sort of mission creep, isn't it? They're just little pockets that don't seem that bad, but they're creeping in different parts of the population, and I think it's quite frightening.